Good morning. So this is our 415, Development and Growth. And today we're going to look at two approaches. One is the issue of development as self-discovery, and the other is the growth diagnostics approach or growth diagnostics framework. So this is straight from your textbook, sections 4.6 and 4.7. The main issue is that in the self-discovery question, the main issue is this. So a firm or a country may not know where their comparative advantage is. Okay, so which products to produce or how to produce these products, whether to target international markets through exports. Such questions require answers before they make investments, before they pay the sunk costs, right? So if they do not know, and typically in the very beginning, if you imagine a non-industrialized economy or an economy in autarkic equilibrium that is not part of international trade, so these questions are important: what to produce, how to produce it, where to sell it, etc. Right? So development for initiating successful development through industrialization and export orientation, then you need to know, you need to self-discover where your comparative advantage is. Okay, so that's the main problem there. And then we have the growth diagnostics approach. It's much richer than the self-discovery approach. So this is has been developed by Hausmann, Roderick, and Velasco. The question is how to identify the barriers. Okay, what are the barriers on growth that these underdeveloped countries face, or currently facing? So there must be a set of obstacles or binding constraints, to be more specific. So because of these constraints, growth does not take place. Because of these constraints, technological progress is not there. Because of these constraints, entrepreneurship is not working, etc. Okay, so we're gonna look at these approaches. In the very simple models, in most of the textbook stuff, we of course assume perfect information and symmetric information, right? So agents in the economy, be them let them be households or firms or the government, so everybody knows everything and there's symmetry, right? So under these very nice conditions about information, of course, people maximize their utility, firms maximize their profits, minimize their costs, and government finds correct policies, right? Governments also have perfect information, exactly identifies what the optimal policy is. So in this ideal world, of course, everything works beautifully. There is a competitive equilibrium. That competitive equilibrium is Pareto efficient, etc., right? So the welfare theorems apply. So everybody is happy. Everybody's happy. But in reality, this is not the case. In reality, we do not have perfect information. We do not have symmetric information. So once we introduce such information constraints and think about the constraints on growth or entrepreneurship or investment, then firms and the people and the government, so they keep asking questions. Where is my comparative advantage? Okay. Now here we have a couple of examples. One is a firm that does not know initially which product to produce, which product
to specialize in. Okay, how to produce these products, which particular technologies, which particular input mixes would be optimal, etc. Where to target, which market to send. Is it going to be England or is it going to be Singapore, right? So questions like these. Then for individuals, there are of course many decisions that are also relevant. One is which profession to pursue, right? Or whether to apply for graduate school, right? Whether to apply to graduate school to pursue a PhD, or whether to take for a worker, for instance, whether to attend on-the-job training, right? So such occupational choice decisions, education decisions, marriage decisions, for instance, that also matters, right? Things like that. And then for the government, we also have relevant questions, because what particular policy to implement and what particular policy is welfare enhancing, what particular policy is growth enhancing, what particular policy is good for reducing inequality, what particular policy is good for alleviating poverty, etc., right? So there are a set of questions that a government needs to ask for self-discovery of what is not known. So then we have a problem. We have a problem of tragedy of commons, right? So now let's narrow our problem into a problem of firms. Now these firms are existing in the underdeveloped economy. So imagine that this economy is largely agrarian. So there's no developed industry, there's no fast technological progress, and there's a government there, but there's a number of firms in different industries. So you may kind of imagine the initial state of the economy as in the big push model, right? So there is an underdeveloped economy, and there are firms and there are goods, different types of goods that can be produced and that can be exported. But now these firms have to self-discover their comparative advantages. So there's a market failure. Why? Because the initial, some of the firms, if they want to be first movers to discover these comparative advantages, then they have to pay the costs. Okay, they have to hire experts, they have to hire managers, they have to, let's say, if it is about mining, for instance, they have to purchase the land, okay, or they have to get some certain, if this is a land endowment of the state, they have to get in contact with the ministries or the state in general, and so they have to make a protocol. So they start digging, right, to look for the precious metal there. So they have to discover this, but no firm wants to be the first mover. That's a very typical tragedy of commons argument. Okay, no firm wants to pay these initial self-discovery costs. So these are information costs now. All right. So then we would have the problem, right? Because if nobody wants to be the first mover, then there's no first mover. All right. So then this economy faces a constraint, faces a particular information externality, a negative externality here. So the information externality is positive for the firms if the initial firm self-discovers, but then as a direct result, there's a tragedy of commons outcome. Okay, so that would create a trap, right? So the argument is, if we extend it a little bit, the argument is like this. So first, there is uncertainties. There's lack of information about the products that the country can produce efficiently and sell in export markets. Okay, first there's that lack of information. Then we also assume that once they learn Okay, once they learn, uh, so in the second stage, we assume that they can pay a cost and adopt foreign technologies. Okay, so now this is a slightly larger model, right? Because now firms, yes, they do not know what particular what particular products to produce or specialize in or export, but now there is also the possibility to import foreign technologies. All right, this is now a slightly richer model. And then if those self-discovery costs are paid, and if the costs for imported technology are paid, then this country can achieve rapid industrialization. Okay, because after they learn what particular products are relevant, after learning how can they, I mean, what are the products that they can specialize in, depending on, of course, their factory endowments, right, their geography, their international relationships with the other countries, etc. If you think about all these, given all these things and given the existing technology in the country, there is a set of goods, both through Ricardine channel or the Hacettepe channel. There is a set of goods that they can produce efficiently. Then they think about, okay, maybe I can do even better if I import foreign technologies to produce these goods. So if I switch to factory system, or if I switch to a particular machine by paying the licenses to the developer of these machines in Germany. Let's say I'm in South Korea and I want to produce a particular machine, and that particular machine could be produced more efficiently or more productively, to be more exact, more productively, by using a particular technology that is developed, that has been developed by the German firms. Okay, then I pay certain license fees. I send my managers and engineers to Germany for them to learn the technology. Then I transfer the technology to my country. Now I know what to produce, and I have a good technology, a productive technology to produce that good. Then I can initiate development through industrialization and exports, right? Because if I keep importing foreign technology, eventually I would be productive enough to sell in the foreign markets. I sell big amounts, all right? That's exactly what happened for, let's say, South Korea, okay? So that type of dynamic eventually results in growth miracles, all right? Countries starting growing. Again, through industrialization and through exports, basically. So there are some case examples. You can also count India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, South Korea, and Colombia. So South Korea, of course, is the best case example, as you know, right? I mean, for this story, it is the best case example, and there are many other countries that can still, according to this theory, that they can still much to learn in terms of self-discovery. Okay. Now, for the growth diagnostics framework, as the name suggests, we want to diagnose why growth does not take place, why there's no investment in certain technologies and certain sectors, why there's no entrepreneurship in certain industries and certain sectors. Okay. But the problem is this: countries are diverse. Countries, I basically mean here, of course, underdeveloped and developing countries. So they are heterogeneous. all right? They have many different geographical attributes, many different cultural attributes, many different institutional attributes. They have different amounts of capital and labor. They have different amounts of skill and knowledge and technology, all right? So in the very beginning, there is a huge diversity across these developing or developed countries. So then how do we diagnose problems, right? Because as the saying goes, one size does not fit all. All right, so I can create this nice, I can tailor this very nice suit, but that suit would be not that suit would not fit all the persons, right? So to develop the correct, the accurate and optimal, let's say, policies, you need to diagnose the problems first, and that diagnostics, that task of diagnosing is not very simple because of this huge diversity. All right. So then Hausmann, Roderick, and Velasco, they proposed this particular approach. All right. So in that approach, you first observe in the private sector, there's a low level of investment and a low degree of entrepreneurship. All right. So you look at a particular industry, let's say, I don't know, chemicals or metals or any particular industry, it doesn't really matter, or overall the manufacturing industry. And you observe, let's say in Uganda or in, I don't know, Sri Lanka or in Gambia, you observe almost no activity. You observe no or very little investment, no or very little entrepreneurship, right? So then you think about possible causes. You think about, all right, why is that, right? Why would it be the case? Then you have this nice decision tree, right? So one type of cost is, of course, low returns, right? Because if returns were high or high enough, then private people would invest. They would exploit these entrepreneurship opportunities because there is profit there, right? So they would have done that. So then there's this possible cause, low returns, right? Now, if you think about low returns, of course, there is now an iteration. Now you iterate the question to ask, all right, but why the returns are low, right? So that's now important. And in that case, you answer two questions. I mean, you find two answers. One is low social returns. The other is low appropriability. All right, now I'm going to define what appropriability is, but low social returns are usually characterized by three things. One, there's poor geography. Second, there's bad infrastructure. And third, there's low human capital, all right? So in terms of social returns, if they are low, there are possibly three reasons. Why it is low? Because there's not enough talented people around you, skillful people. Once you invest in this particular technology, you cannot find the engineers, you cannot find the managers, you cannot find skillful workers to be hired. So low human capital is important. Why bad geography? Well, weather is terrible. So people are not working productively. And look at infrastructure. If bad geography is coupled with bad infrastructure, then you cannot even transport your goods. Okay? Even if you had the factory you may not transport your goods to the market or to the sellers, right? I mean to the buyers. So so there is this problem. Returns would be low because of these reasons. Bad infrastructure, there's no road, there's no bridge, there's no way to sail across the river, there's no way to ship your output to the markets. The geography is poor, it's always raining, it's always very humid, it's all rocky mountains, etc. And there's no people, no skillful people that you can work with, whom you can work with. Okay, so that explains these low returns. Another part, now appropriability, I mean, you may imagine appropriability is the is like, so there is a profit opportunity there, but you cannot capture those profits. You cannot appropriate. You cannot, in de facto sense, you cannot capture your share of return. All right, and there could be, you know, different reasons again, of course. Now, here we have two types of failures. One type is government failures, another type is market failures. Now, in the government failures, we have macro risks and micro risks. Okay, in terms of micro risks, property rights, corruption, taxes. So these are blocking your profit opportunities, right? Think about property rights. So you're gonna invest, but if there is this risk involving about your rights of property, if you have the slightest doubt that government or some corrupted military generals, if they will have the power to appropriate your firm themselves, all right, then you have low appropriability. You are not really sure whether you're going to benefit from such investment. Okay, think about corruption. Now, if you have this firm, you want to keep investing, right? And you of course have to have a certain relationship with the state, with the society, right? And if the politicians are corrupt there, and if the network ties, you know, benefit some firms but not the other firms, and you may, if you are one of the other firms that are hurt by these corrupt politicians, that type of corruption network, then your appropriability is again low, because you keep bribing the corrupt politicians to be part of the, let's say, public procurement, right? Basically to get deals from the government, etc. All right. Another is taxes. Imagine that the government is heavily taxing the private sector. Imagine that there's this set of distortionary tax policies that decreases appropriability almost to zero. All right, your after-tax profit, if it is close to zero, if it is not covering your sunk costs, all right, then you may think again. So those are the type of micro government failures, right? And then there are macro government failures. If the policy environment in general is bad, if the government cannot assure that the macroeconomic equilibrium is stable, then you also face difficulties. Why? Because there is high inflation in the economy, there's high interest rates in the economy, financial markets are not well developed, so you may not find credit at any interest rate you want to pay, etc., etc. Right? So the macro policy environment, which is of course the responsibility of the government of the country, is usually a reason. I mean, if it is not good enough, if financial markets are not developed enough, if the fiscal policies are not expansionary in the times of recessions, if monetary policy is managed badly, if central bank is not independent, etc., 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 these result in high inflation rates, higher interest rates, etc., etc. Right? So these outcomes are macro government failures. Then for low appropriability, we also have market failures, right? And in the market failures, one is the information externality we just discussed. So you have to pay the self-discovery costs, right? So this decreases your profit. This decreases your appropriability. And then you have the coordination failures or coordination externalities. And we also discussed these things in the, let's say, big push model, right? So there's also certain, then the end result is there's also certain market failures typically associated with information and coordination. So those things also imply low appropriability, right? Because you don't want to be the first mover. You don't want to be the only firm that switched to new technology in the big push model, right? Because now you cannot sustain, you cannot profitably use that technology if you are the only firm using that technology, right? Because there's this externality. Okay, now the other type of possible causes, of course, is the other side of the medallion, right? One side of the medallion is the return. The other side is the cost. And there, we must be observing high costs of financing your investment or entrepreneurship if you observe very low levels. Okay? So then we have two types of results. One is in the international markets, you cannot find cheap credit. And then in the local market, in the national currency, in your own country, you also cannot find cheap credit. Okay. Now, that type of decision tree could be extended a little bit because, for instance, bad international finance are usually associated with country risk. Okay. The aggregate risk in your country in terms of financial collapse or currency collapse. So those are affecting the international investors who have the supply of funds and who would have give you this as a type of credit. All right. Then in the local level, in the domestic level, you may have low level of savings and or poor intermediation. So when we have low level of savings, I mean that's obviously a blocking constraint because if you cannot find these funds internationally, then you must find them locally in the domestic market in the country. And if the country is poor, then they have low level of savings. Or even if people are saving, the financial markets are not developed enough. Banks are not managed well. So most of the people, most of these savers are not putting their savings into their savings accounts in the banks. Instead, they keep their money in the form of, let's say, gold and and at home. All right. So that's also the type of problem that you face when you think about entrepreneurship or investment, because now you cannot find the necessary amount of loan, necessary amount of credit at a reasonable price, okay, at a reasonable rate. So that's one type of course, diagnostic framework that focuses on private investment and entrepreneurship. You may also draw another one, for instance, for low human capital, right? So you can extend the tree from this dimension on and find the reasons why people have low human capital. Okay, then you can extend, for instance, these micro risks by government, why property rights are not protected well, why the politicians are corrupt, and why taxes are very high. Okay, so you can extend these things. And if you go back to the first week, that diagram, that flow diagram of the role of geography and institutions, you can see some of the answers, right? Why corruption is there? It has a couple of reasons. Why coordination externalities are there? It has some reasons, right? So you may extend that type of decision tree, or you can create new decision trees by asking new questions. Why, for instance, largest firms in Turkey have very low level of R&D spending compared to their international competitors? Okay, I mean, think about Turkcell, for instance. Okay, so Turkcell is an IT firm, right? Information and ICT firm, information and communication technologies. And Turkcell is one of the biggest in Turkey, right? Perhaps the biggest in Turkey. Or maybe Türk Telekom is bigger, but anyhow, so Turkcell is a very big company, right? Now, if you look at how much Turkcell spends on R&D, you find some number, right? Now compare it with, for instance, AT&T in the US or Verizon. So these are ICT companies, or more specifically, broadband, internet, and telephone technology companies. So if you compare the R&D spending of Turkcell and R&D spending levels of Turkcell and, let's say, AT&T or Verizon, then you see a big difference, even if you adjust for some common factor. All right. So why is that? Why firms in Turkey, and you can also do this for other industries. You can look at construction. You can look at clothing industry. You can look at in general apparel. You can look at wood industries. You can look at I don't know, furniture, glass, chemicals, metals. Wherever you look at, underdeveloped or developing countries spend either no amount to R&D or only a little. Why? That's a good question. And some of these answers are there. Some of these answers are in this decision tree, but you may also develop new mechanisms. You may also think about other particular costs or other particular mechanisms that imply low returns. All right. So that's overall a highly, let's say, fruitful approach, right? Because for one country, you can end up at micro risks corruption. For another country, you can end up at low domestic saving. For one country, you can end up at poor geography. For another country, you can end up at poor intermediation of domestic financial markets. All right. So that allows you to travel around the world and to diagnose, of course, using data and other particular empirical methodologies. You find the reasons. Okay. That could be nice, for instance, if you think about Turkey, using this scheme. All right, using this particular framework, for instance, explain Turkey's development problems. What are the reasons? Why? Which one of these is the most important, or are the more important ones? All right, questions like these could be highly relevant, and you can do it for many different countries and many different contexts. So that's all I have for self-discovery and growth diagnostics approach. Now I can answer your questions, and we can discuss if you have any input to put forward.
I have no question, but I want to say something.
Of course, go ahead.
Roderick's article, which you sent us before, Washington Consensus.
Yeah.
He said that Washington Consensus recommends the same or one-size policies to every country. But in this theory, we say that we have to find, or we should find, the most binding constraint, because
Exactly.
every country has different characteristics.
Exactly.
But this Washington Consensus recommends same policies, like devaluation of the currency, or some tax regulations, some fiscal regulations. Also, in our book, some have said more art than science to criticize this theory. But I think it is better for the whole world to try make this art. And Washington Consensus do wrong sometimes, in my view. What can you say about this problem? Or maybe this is not a problem.
I didn't get the last part. So you think Washington Consensus is what?
I think that their theories, their policy recommendations inhibit development for underdeveloped or developing countries. They do the wrong thing because they recommend every country to one-size policies to implement. And I think this is the wrong in my view.
So, all right. That's exactly the earlier article that you have read, right? Roderick's article. So that's obviously true, because most of the Washington Consensus principles, or all of them, if you will, so they depend on a very narrow-minded thinking of the real world, and that is so idealistic. Okay. There's no information externalities, there's no coordination externalities, there's no problem of finance, right? I mean, if you think about the possible causes that we discussed just today, the model in their mind is so idealistic. It's like a very simple model. And simple models sometimes are very useful for you to think about, and for you to explore some of the issues theoretically. But if they're too simple, it's not good for policy purposes. So that's the continuation of course, people like Roderick's and like Hausmann and other structuralists, other critiques of neoliberal, let's say, policy frameworks. So they try to find a much more, let's say, realistic view on economic development. All right, and that starts with identifying, diagnosing the problem first, right? So remember, we discussed RCTs, and in RCTs, for instance, without diagnosing anything, you go there and try an intervention. Now, that intervention at the end, I mean, that experiment at the end allows you to understand whether it works or not, but it does not diagnose the initial problem, right? So that type of growth diagnostics framework then is useful, and it is not just a modern or more recent theory. It is also more useful, more, let me say, if you want my opinion, I think it is more convincing, more reliable way of thinking about development policy. And yes, it is more like art sometimes, because you have to be creative, and that takes us back to my earlier discussion about Feyerabend, right? So we have to try new theories. We have to develop different mechanisms, and we should look for, we should try to identify whether data suggests that type of mechanism is relevant for a particular underdeveloped economy. So, so in terms of Roderick's intellectual continuation, of course, that is a consistent view after understanding the limitations of the pro-market development policies. Then he, of course, is part of the team that develops the growth diagnostics approach.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? So what do you think about Turkey's in that case? So how can you let me share it again. So how can you think about Turkey's development problems using the growth diagnostics framework? Because as I said, in certain sectors, private investment is low and entrepreneurship is not exactly brilliant.
I think we have weak institutional quality, and maybe our credit system is problematic, in my opinion, and maybe.
So which one? So look at the last row, right? Look at the row at the bottom. So these are according to this framework in the textbook. So these are the root causes, right?
Yeah.
So low human capital, property rights, corruption, high taxes, financial, monetary, and fiscal instability, information externalities, coordination externalities, low domestic saving, and poor intermediation of financial resources. So which one do you think, and I'm asking to all of you, is the most daunting problem for Turkey? Great. Okay. I don't have a very strong opinion about this either, but I know information externalities and coordination externalities are possibly there, because those are common to perhaps any economy, right? In terms of macro risks, we know that inflation is not at the very stable level. Foreign exchange is not good right now, right? We also know that there is a strong degree of corruption in Turkey. We also know that human capital is low. All right. We don't have. I mean, most of the. The average years of schooling in Turkey is around 8 years, as I said before. So that's only in terms of quantity. I mean, even in terms of quantity, we have a huge problem. So you may, of course, then ask, why there's corruption. And then you can spend a lifetime on finding the answer. Okay? All right. That is all for today. Next week, please look at your online education system for updates. I'm going to put some slides and some readings. And then next week, we're going to continue with the measurement of poverty and inequality. All right. Let me double check. Yes, in chapter 5, we have poverty and inequality, and we're going to discuss those issues. All right. So it will be 28th of December. All right. Then I'm ending this session and wish you a wonderful week.
Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.